What if I told you that there once existed an empire so powerful it stopped Rome, yes, the mighty Rome, in its tracks? And what if I told you that this same empire controlled the lifeblood of ancient trade, the Silk Road itself, turning desert sands into rivers of gold? Welcome to the world of the Parthians, warriors who rode like the wind, archers who could shoot while fleeing, and kings who carved their realm out of chaos. This is the untold story of the Parthian Empire, the horse-born masters who humbled legions, defied emperors, and built a dynasty that ruled for nearly 5 centuries. It begins in the vast deserts of Persia, where one man, a rebel chieftain named Arsaces, dared to challenge the decaying power of Alexander's successors. His defiance would ignite a saga of conquest, diplomacy, and betrayal that would stretch from the mountains of Iran to the gates of Rome. But here's the twist. Though the Parthians fought Rome for centuries, their name is barely remembered today. Why? How could an empire that stood as Rome's equal simply vanish into the dust? Stay with me, because this is the forgotten epic of the Parthian Empire. Arsaces and the birth of an empire. Have you ever wondered how empires are truly born? Not in golden halls or marble palaces, but in the grit, fear, and fury of rebellion. Our story begins not with a king, but with a rebel. A man whose name would echo across centuries, Arsaces. It is the 3rd century BCE. The vast remnants of Alexander the Great's once glorious empire lie fractured. His generals, now kings themselves, squabble like jackals over his carcass. Among them, the Seleucid Empire rules from the city of Antioch, stretching over Mesopotamia, Persia, and beyond. But distance is a dangerous thing for any ruler. The eastern provinces, far from the royal court, begin to slip through their fingers. And it is there, in the rough, arid lands of Parthia, that something stirs. Imagine a place of endless plains and rocky mountains, where wind and sand shape everything, even the people. The Parni, a nomadic tribe of skilled horsemen, ride across these lands. They are fierce, proud, and restless. Among them rises Arsaces, a leader whose eyes see what others cannot: opportunity. The Seleucids are distracted, their governors corrupt, and their soldiers tired of fighting wars for kings they'll never meet. Arsaces sees a chance to carve his people's destiny from the cracks of empire. But this will not be easy. The Seleucid garrisons still guard Parthia's key cities. The governors still claim loyalty to Antioch. To challenge them is to challenge the might of a Hellenistic superpower. Yet Arsaces dares. With only a handful of loyal riders, he begins a rebellion that history almost forgot. At first, it seems impossible. How could a small tribe defy one of the world's great powers? But Arsaces is no ordinary rebel. He understands mobility, surprise, and terrain. His people live and die on horseback. They do not fight in the rigid formations of Greek phalanxes. They fight like ghosts, vanishing into the horizon, only to strike again when least expected. It begins with raids, swift, surgical, and merciless. Seleucid tax collectors disappear in the deserts. Outposts burn in the night. Traders whisper that the Parni have risen. Soon Parthia's governor is forced to retreat to his fortified city. Arsaces presses on, seizing one town after another. Within months, the rebel has become a ruler, and Parthia is no longer a province. It is a kingdom reborn. But victory is never free. The Seleucid king, Antiochus II, cannot ignore this defiance. He sends a large army eastward to crush the uprising. To the Seleucids, it is just another campaign. To Arsaces, it is survival itself. The two forces meet on the plains near Nisa, the future capital of the Parthian kings. The Seleucids march in formation, gleaming with bronze and steel, their banners snapping in the desert wind. Across the field, the Parni cavalry circle like hawks, lean, silent, eyes gleaming under the sun. The battle begins with thunder. Arrows hiss through the air. The Parthian horse archers unleash a storm of death, darting in and out of range, never holding still. The Seleucids advance, shields locked, trying to close the distance, but every step they take costs them lives. The Parthians ride closer, fire, and flee before the lances can touch them. This is the birth of a legend, the Parthian shot. Even while retreating, their archers twist backward on horseback and fire with deadly precision. It becomes the signature of Parthian warfare, a weapon of humiliation that will one day terrify Rome itself. The Seleucid army breaks. The survivors flee west, leaving Parthia in Arsaces' hands. Against all odds, a nomad has forged a nation. But now comes the most dangerous challenge of all. Not conquest, but rule. Arsaces knows that power must be more than victory. It must endure. He establishes his capital at Nisa, building fortresses, temples, and royal tombs. He blends Greek administration with Persian tradition, creating a new identity, the Parthian state. Coins are minted bearing his image, not as a tribal chieftain, but as King Arsaces, a title that every Parthian ruler will adopt for centuries. Still, the empire's birth is fragile. The Seleucids regroup and return under Antiochus III, the Great. His armies storm eastward, crushing rebellion after rebellion. Arsaces' successors are forced to retreat into the mountains, waiting for their moment. Antiochus wins back Parthia on paper, but his empire is stretched too thin. When he withdraws to fight in the west, the Parthians rise again, and this time they do not stop. Under Arsaces' brother Tiridates, the Parthians consolidate their hold. City by city, province by province, they expand. First Parthia, then Hyrcania, then the regions beyond the Caspian. The dream of Arsaces grows larger than life. Here, pause and imagine the transformation. A handful of riders in the desert have birthed an empire that will one day challenge Rome. The men who began as nomads now sit upon thrones, their cities adorned with Greek columns and Persian fire altars. Yet beneath all the ceremony, the soul of the Parthians remains the same, restless, proud, and dangerous. By the end of the 2nd century BCE, the Seleucid Empire is in ruins. The Parthians, once rebels, now rule Persia. They claim the legacy of the Achaemenids, declaring themselves heirs to Cyrus the Great. To the west, Rome rises in the Mediterranean. To the east, the Han dynasty blooms in China. Between them lies the new empire of the horsemen, the Parthians, masters of the middle world. And yet, for all their power, a shadow begins to stir. For in the distance, Rome watches. The Republic is hungry, ambitious, and armed with legions unlike any the world has seen. The Parthians, proud of their archery and speed, have yet to face a power that will not retreat. The collision is inevitable. As the sun sets over the golden sands of Parthia, one cannot help but wonder, when the legions of Rome and the riders of Parthia finally meet, who will break first? Because that battle, when it comes, will change the balance of the ancient world forever. The Parthians versus Rome, the day the legions fell. Have you ever seen arrogance turn to horror? Have you ever watched the world's most disciplined army crumble before an enemy it didn't even understand? That is what happened on the burning plains of Carrhae, where Rome, at the height of its pride, met the Parthian war machine for the first time. And lost everything. The year is 53 BCE. The Roman Republic is at its zenith. Its generals carve kingdoms from Gaul to the Nile, and its senators speak of destiny, the destiny to rule the known world. Among them stands Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the richest men in Roman history, and the third pillar of the first triumvirate, alongside Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. But gold and politics are not enough for Crassus. He craves glory. He wants a triumph, a victory to rival Caesar's conquests, and so he looks east, toward Parthia. To the Roman mind, Parthia is a land of barbaric horsemen, a half-forgotten kingdom born from the ashes of Persia. Easy pickings, they think. Crassus promises a swift campaign, riches beyond imagination, and an empire stretching to India. He gathers a massive army, over 40,000 Roman soldiers, seasoned veterans of countless wars, and marches through Syria into the Parthian frontier. But across those endless plains, the Parthians wait. Their king, Orodes II, knows that facing Rome head-on would be suicide. Instead, he sends his greatest general, Surena. History remembers him as a man of impossible contrasts, tall, handsome, draped in jewels, yet commanding loyalty from the roughest warriors of the steppe. Surena is cunning, patient, and utterly ruthless. The two armies meet near the small town of Carrhae, in modern-day Turkey. The Romans stand in perfect formation, their heavy infantry bristling with shields and spears. They expect to crush a horde of ragged horsemen. Instead, they face a vision of disciplined, terrifying beauty. 10,000 Parthian cavalry, armored in glinting scale, horses and riders shimmering like metal statues under the sun. And behind them, thousands of archers with quivers that seem bottomless. As dawn breaks, Serena gives the signal. The desert explodes with sound. Drums beat like thunder. The air fills with a high-pitched hum, the hiss of arrows slicing through the wind. The Romans lock shields, their tortoise formation tight. But these are not ordinary arrows. They are shot from composite bows, drawn with such force that they pierce through armor. The first volleys tear through the ranks. Soldiers scream. Shields splinter. Still they hold. Then, something strange happens. The Parthians begin to retreat. The Romans cheer. Crassus believes victory is near. He orders his cavalry forward, led by his son, Publius Crassus, a brave young officer eager to prove himself. They chase the Parthians into the open desert, but the retreat is an illusion. The Parthians wheel around in perfect unison. As their horses gallop away, the riders twist backward in their saddles, firing arrow after arrow without slowing down. The Romans are slaughtered before they can even raise their shields. This is the infamous Parthian shot, a dance of death perfected through centuries of nomadic warfare. Within hours, Publius is dead, his cavalry annihilated. His head is sent back to Crassus, carried aloft on a spear as Parthian war drums echo across the sands. Back at the main Roman camp, panic spreads. The legionaries surrounded can neither advance nor retreat. Serena orders the next phase. The heavy cavalry, Cataphracts, advance. Clad in full armor, their lances long as pikes, they charge like an iron wave. The Roman shields shatter under the impact. The sun beats down. The sand glows red. For 2 days, the Romans endure a nightmare of arrows, exhaustion, and fear. Their water runs out. Their courage breaks. Crassus, once the richest man in Rome, now stands amidst corpses and vultures, watching his dream dissolve into dust. At last, Serena sends a message: surrender, and you will live. Desperate, Crassus agrees to negotiate. The two leaders meet at dusk. But when tempers flare, chaos erupts. Crassus is struck down, killed on the spot. According to legend, the Parthians pour molten gold into his mouth, mocking his greed. Rome has suffered one of its worst defeats in history. 20,000 soldiers lie dead. 10,000 more are taken captive and marched east, vanishing into the far provinces of the Parthian Empire. Some are rumored to have reached the borders of China, settling there under new names, a ghost army of Rome, lost forever in the east. The world trembles. For the first time, Rome has met an enemy it cannot conquer. The Parthians have shown that power alone does not guarantee victory. Speed, precision, and patience can humble even the greatest empire. News of Carrhae spreads like wildfire. In Rome, shame burns. Senators whisper that the gods have turned against them. Julius Caesar himself begins plotting revenge, but fate intervenes. His assassination halts all plans of eastern conquest. The Parthians meanwhile celebrate. Orodes too throws a grand festival, reenacting the Roman defeat on stage, with an actor dressed as Crassus begging for mercy. Yet even amid victory, a warning hums beneath the triumph. Serena, the hero of Carrhae, grows too popular. The Parthian nobles whisper that he is a threat to the king, and in a cruel twist, Orodes orders his execution. The man who saved the empire dies by the very hand he protected. Still, the legend of Carrhae cannot be buried. For centuries to come, Roman generals would march east dreaming of revenge and fearing the ghosts of those who never came home. And so, a fragile balance emerges. Rome dominates the west, Parthia holds the east. Between them, the Euphrates River becomes more than a border. It becomes a line of pride, power, and prophecy. But something else begins to flow across that invisible frontier: trade, ideas, and gold. The Silk Road, that shimmering artery between worlds, starts to pulse with life. And at its beating heart stands the Parthian Empire. The question now is, can a kingdom built on horses and arrows master the art of wealth and diplomacy? Or will the road that brings them fortune also lead them to ruin? Because in the next chapter, the Parthians discover a new kind of battle, not for land or armies, but for the world's most precious treasure, the control of trade itself. The Silk Road Kings, Parthia's Golden Age. Have you ever wondered how a land of deserts and horsemen became the beating heart of the world's most luxurious trade route? How a people once known for their arrows and ambushes grew rich not by war, but by silk, gold, and secrets. This is the story of Parthia's golden age, the era when empires bowed not to armies, but to merchants carrying treasures across the roof of the world. The year is around 30 BCE. The dust from Rome's civil wars has begun to settle. Julius Caesar is gone, and his heir, Octavian, soon to be known as Augustus, rules a Roman Empire reborn. But far to the east, beyond the Euphrates, another power sits on its throne, the Parthian Empire, under King Phraates IV, heir to centuries of Arsacid glory. At this point in history, Rome and Parthia stand as the two superpowers of the known world. Between them stretches the great artery of civilization, the Silk Road. This vast network of routes runs from the Han dynasty of China to the Mediterranean, carrying not only silk, but spices, glass, gems, ivory, and ideas. And sitting right at its center, like a toll-keeper between worlds, is Parthia. Picture it. Caravans of camels snaking through endless deserts, their bells jingling under the blazing sun. Traders from India, Persia, and China stop at Parthian cities, Nisa, Ecbatana, Hekatompilos, each a bustling hub of wealth and intrigue. Here, Greek merchants haggle in the same markets as Persian nobles. Roman envoys whisper deals in smoky taverns. The air smells of incense, spice, and ambition. Parthia's genius lies not in conquest, but in control. They do not seek to dominate every land their merchants cross. Instead, they act as middlemen, brokers of the world's most precious goods. Chinese silk moves west, Roman glass moves east, and Parthian hands profit from both. In an age before global trade, Parthia becomes the world's first great commercial empire. But trade is never just about goods. It's about power. Every caravan that crosses Parthian soil must pay a toll. Every road is guarded, every oasis taxed. The wealth pouring in transforms their cities into jewels of civilization. Palaces rise from the sands, adorned with marble imported from the west and gold from the east. Kings dine beneath frescoed ceilings, while poets sing of the empire's glory. Yet behind the splendor, danger simmers. For every coin earned through peace, there's a rival eager to seize it through war. And no rival is more dangerous than Rome. The Romans never forgot Carrhae. The humiliation still burns in their memory. Under Augustus, diplomacy replaces open war for a while. Ambassadors cross the Euphrates with cautious smiles and hidden daggers. One of Augustus's greatest achievements is the recovery of the lost legionary standards taken by the Parthians decades earlier. To Rome, it is redemption. To Parthia, a calculated gesture. Peace for now is profitable. During this uneasy truce, something extraordinary happens. The Parthians begin to adopt and reshape the cultures around them. Greek architecture, Persian royal ceremony, and nomadic traditions merge into a unique identity. On their coins, kings still bear the proud title Arsaces, honoring their founder, but their portraits evolve, beards thick, crowns tall, eyes sharp with both pride and paranoia. These are not kings of marble. They are living symbols of a hybrid empire, standing between east and west. Still, not all is calm. The Parthian court is a nest of intrigue. Brothers poison brothers. Sons betray fathers. Power shifts like desert sand. In one of the most dramatic tales of the era, Phraates IV himself is overthrown by his own son, who allies with the Romans, only to be betrayed and executed when he overplays his hand. The Parthian throne is both a crown and a curse, and yet, despite the bloodshed, the empire endures. The reason? Its decentralized power. The Arsacid kings rule not through fear alone, but through alliance. Local nobles, called satraps, govern their own territories with relative autonomy, as long as they pay tribute and honor the crown. This flexibility becomes Parthia's secret weapon. Unlike Rome, where power flows from a single center, Parthia thrives through balance, a network of loyalty, profit, and tradition. This balance extends beyond politics to diplomacy. When the Chinese Han dynasty sends envoys westward, they meet Parthian merchants who describe Rome as Da Qin, the Great Qin, a distant empire of stone cities and strange customs. In Chinese records, the Parthians are praised for their wealth and honesty in trade. Through them, silk and paper reach the Roman world for the first time, while Roman silver and glass find their way to the markets of the East. Parthia becomes not just a kingdom, but a bridge, an empire of connection. And for over 2 centuries, it prospers in this role. But every golden age casts a long shadow. As Rome expands under emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, its hunger for the East grows again. The Parthian border becomes a frontier of espionage and skirmishes. Meanwhile, within Parthia, the old feudal order begins to rot. Local lords grow rich and rebellious. The kings, distracted by court intrigue, lose control over the peripheries. By the 2nd century CE, the cracks begin to show. Yet even as decline looms, the legend of Parthia's splendor remains unmatched. The Romans, for all their arrogance, admire their eastern rivals. To them, Parthia is a land of mystery, where the sun rises over domed palaces and armored knights ride through cities of gold. Still, fate is relentless. A storm is gathering on the horizon, one that neither Rome nor Parthia can escape. From the mountains of Persia, a new power begins to rise. A man named Ardashir, founder of the Sassanid dynasty, who dreams of reviving the ancient Persian glory of Cyrus and Darius. And when he looks east and west, he sees only one obstacle standing in his path: Parthia. The Silk Road has made the Parthians kings. But soon, it will also make them targets. Because when trade and ambition intertwine, peace is only ever a pause before the next great war. Fire and iron, the fall of the Parthians and the rise of Persia. Have you ever seen an empire collapse not from invasion, but from within? Not from the sword of its enemies, but from the rot of its own foundation. That is the story of Parthia's fall, an empire that once ruled the crossroads of the world, now devoured by its own ambition, betrayal, and the unrelenting march of time. The year is around 200 CE. For nearly 5 centuries, the Parthian Empire has stood as the gatekeeper between East and West. But the sands beneath its throne are shifting. The once golden Silk Road that enriched its kings now feeds its enemies. New powers rise on every frontier. Rome, under the Severan emperors, pushes eastward once again, eager to avenge old wounds. And in the south, in the old Persian heartlands of Fars, whispers spread of rebellion, a rebellion led by a man with fire in his veins. His name is Ardashir. Before he was a conqueror, Ardashir was a provincial ruler in Persis, a small vassal kingdom within the Parthian realm. His family traced their lineage to the Achaemenids, the ancient kings of Persia who built the empire of Cyrus and Darius centuries before the Parthians ever rode from the steppe. And unlike the tired nobles of Ctesiphon, Parthia's capital, Ardashir dreams not of wealth, but of renewal. He sees the Parthian court as decadent, divided, and unworthy of Persia's legacy. The last Parthian king, Artabanus IV, is no fool. He senses the danger, but his empire is already fractured. The great noble families, the Surin, the Karen, the Mihran, rule their territories like miniature kingdoms, answering the crown only when it suits them. The once feared Parthian cavalry now fights more for gold than for glory. Artabanus sends envoys to rally loyalty, but the responses are half-hearted. Meanwhile, Ardashir gathers strength in silence. He reforms his army, fortifies his cities, and spreads a new message: that the gods favor Persia once more, that the fire of Ahura Mazda will cleanse the old order, and that the true heirs of Cyrus will rise again. His words ignite the hearts of men weary of corruption and foreign influence. Slowly, province by province, he conquers the south. When Artabanus finally marches to stop him, it is already too late. The two armies meet in 224 CE at Hormozgan, a dusty plain where the fate of centuries is decided. The Parthians ride into battle in glittering armor, cataphracts glinting under the sun, banners whipping in the wind. But their ranks are divided. Lords fight beside the king but do not trust him. Ardashir's army, smaller but disciplined, advances in tight formation. The first charge shatters like glass. The Parthian nobles, unused to coordinated battle, break formation in confusion. Ardashir's troops strike with deadly precision, surrounding the king's guard. Arrows rain down. Lances meet flesh. The desert shakes with the echoes of dying empires. Artabanus falls, pierced through the heart. The banner of the Arsacids drops to the ground. And just like that, After nearly 500 years, the Parthian Empire ends, not with a grand invasion, but with one final gasp on the battlefield of its homeland. Ardashir stands victorious. The flames of Zoroastrian fire temples rise across Persia as he declares himself Shahanshah, King of Kings. The Sassanid Empire is born, rising like a phoenix from Parthia's ashes. But this new empire is not content to inherit the old, it seeks to surpass it. Ardashir claims divine right, declaring that the gods themselves chose him to restore the ancient Persian order. Where the Parthians were loose and feudal, the Sassanids are centralized and disciplined. Where the Parthians tolerated many faiths, the Sassanids impose a state religion, Zoroastrianism reborn. Yet even in death, Parthia leaves an indelible mark. Its warriors' culture and architecture flow into the Sassanid state. The Cataphracts cavalry becomes the model for medieval knights. The concept of decentralized nobility influences Persian politics for centuries, and its memory lingers in the lands it once ruled, from Mesopotamia to Afghanistan. But perhaps Parthia's most powerful legacy lies in the idea it represented: a bridge between civilizations. For centuries, Parthia connected the Mediterranean to China, the Greeks to the Persians, and the Romans to the east. It was never a monolithic empire like Rome, or a uniform dynasty like Han China. It was something more fluid, half nomad, half monarch, a living embodiment of the crossroads where worlds collided. As Ardashir consolidates power, he inherits not only the land but the ghosts of Parthia. He faces the same eternal enemy, Rome. The wars begin again, just as they always have. Rome crosses the Euphrates, Persia retaliates, and history repeats its endless cycle of conquest and revenge. But deep down, something has changed. The age of the horseman is ending. The world is entering an era of new empires, new faiths, and new technologies. The Parthians, once the masters of mobility, cannot survive in a world that demands permanence. Their disappearance is not a tragedy. It is a transformation. Still, one can't help but imagine the echoes left behind. Somewhere in the ruins of an ancient caravanserai, perhaps a coin still lies buried in the dust. One side stamped with a Roman eagle, the other with the crowned head of an Arsacid king. A silent reminder that for centuries, two worlds met and fought in the middle. And though Ardashir now wears the crown, his empire too will one day crumble. But the Parthians, their legend endures. Every time a rider turns his bow backward and fires, every time trade unites distant lands, their spirit rides again. The empire may have burned, but the flame of Parthia still flickers in the story of civilization itself. The legacy of the Parthians, the empire that refused to die. Have you ever wondered how some empires vanish from maps but never truly disappear from history? How a civilization erased by conquerors can still shape the future of entire continents? The Parthian Empire is one of those ghosts, gone in name, alive in influence. Its fall marked the end of one era, but its legacy became the foundation for the next 2,000 years of Eurasian history. When Ardashir's Sassanid Empire rose from the ashes of Parthia, many believed the old order was gone forever. But that belief was an illusion. The Parthians had buried their roots deep into the soil of Persia, deeper than conquest could uproot. The Sassanids inherited not a dead realm, but a living network of ideas, systems, and traditions that the Parthians had refined across centuries. Let's return, for a moment, to the heart of that vanished world. The Parthians were the bridge, the connective tissue of the ancient world, between China's silk and Rome's gold, between Greek philosophy and Persian mysticism, between nomadic freedom and imperial structure. No other empire before them had managed to unite such contradictions, to live between worlds and thrive there. In this, they were pioneers of a global system that would long outlive them. Their cities, Hekatompelos, Ecbatana, and Ctesiphon, remained vital trade centers even after the empire's fall. The Silk Road that the Parthians once guarded like a jewel continued to pulse with life under the Sassanids, the Arabs, and later the Mongols. The toll stations, the caravanserais, the customs networks, all systems the Parthians perfected, became the blueprint for global commerce. Even Rome, their greatest enemy, absorbed their lessons. The defeat at Carrhae haunted Roman military strategists for generations. The Parthian tactics, mobility, feigned retreat, and the deadly backward shot were studied and adapted by future armies. When the Eastern Roman Empire later evolved into Byzantium, its cavalry and armored tactics bore clear traces of Parthian influence. But beyond strategy and trade, the Parthians shaped something far more subtle: identity. They were the inheritors of Persia's grandeur and the transmitters of Hellenistic culture, blending both into a hybrid civilization unlike any before. Their art told stories in Greek style but with Persian soul. Their coins bore the language of Alexander's heirs but the face of Iranian kings. Their empire, in many ways, was the first truly globalized power, not through technology, but through coexistence, and that coexistence carried forward into the Sassanid age. When Ardashir built his empire, he did so on a Parthian framework. Many noble families of Parthia, the Suran, the Carrhae, and others, continued to hold influence, serving as governors and generals. The Sassanid kings ruled from the same palaces, walked the same marble halls, and gazed upon the same riverbanks that Parthian rulers had known. The line between the two empires blurred. The name changed, the crown changed, but the spirit endured. Meanwhile, far to the west, the Romans never truly conquered the memory of Carrhae. Each time a Roman emperor looked east, he saw not just an enemy, but a rival civilization, disciplined, wealthy, and enduring. Even as the centuries passed, Rome's successors, from Byzantium to the Crusaders, would encounter the echoes of Parthia in the east, in the armored cavalry that thundered across the plains, in the palaces of Ctesiphon, in the diplomacy of Persian courts that balanced pride with patience, and in the east, the legacy spread further still. When Chinese historians of the Han and later Tang dynasties wrote about the Western world, they described Anxi, the land of the Parthians, as a place of noble kings, strong armies, and honest traders. Chinese silk that once passed through Parthian hands became the thread that stitched together the fates of civilizations. Some scholars even believe the Roman prisoners from Carrhae who vanished into the east became mercenaries in Central Asia, their descendants living quietly under new banners. But history's strangest trick is how empires reappear in disguise. The Sassanids would eventually fall to the rising tide of Islam in the 7th century, yet even then, the Parthian essence endured. Many early Islamic dynasties in Persia adopted Parthian administrative systems and noble titles. The Abbasid Caliphate's capital, Baghdad, rose near the ruins of Ctesiphon, as if history refused to leave that sacred ground. And when the medieval world took shape, the very concept of the armored knight, a man and horse encased in iron, charging with a lance, traced its ancestry to the Parthian Cataphracts. The chivalric ideals of mounted nobility, honor, and disciplined warfare carried the ghost of the Parthian rider across continents. The West may have forgotten the name, but it remembered the image. Yet perhaps the most profound legacy of all lies in what the Parthians taught the world about survival. They proved that empires need not conquer to endure. Sometimes, power lies in being the middle, the one who connects others, who profits from exchange, who knows when to fight and when to wait. The Parthians mastered patience in an age of pride. They never sought to burn the world down. They sought to balance it. And in that balance, they thrived for half a millennium. Today, their name may not shine like Rome or Persia, but look closer. Beneath every great empire that came after, the Sassanids, the Abbasids, the Ottomans, even the Silk Road itself, you can still find the faint hoofprints of Parthian horses. Their story is a reminder that history remembers not only those who build monuments, but those who build bridges. The Parthians did both, on horseback, under the scorching sun, between two worlds that still struggle to understand one another. So the next time you hear of empires lost and forgotten, remember this: some vanish in the dust, others ride on forever. The Parthians, rebels, traders, kings, and ghosts, never truly died. They simply became part of everything that came after. History often tells us that only the loudest conquerors matter. But the Parthians whisper a different truth, that endurance, adaptability, and vision can echo longer than any victory. If you've journeyed with me this far through deserts, battles, and centuries, take a moment to reflect on the empire that Rome could not erase. If you love uncovering the hidden stories behind forgotten civilizations, the ones that shaped the world in silence, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video, because there are still countless lost empires waiting to be rediscovered. And our next journey begins soon.